A factory producing garments for the Gap was raided, and children as young as 10 were found working under terrible conditions.
Has been caught using forced labor in Malaysia.
On Monday, June 25th, 79 teenagers held against their will and forced into prostitution were rescued at hotels, truck stops, and storefronts
There seems to be a perception out there that this only occurs abroad. This doesn't happen in the United States,
humans
but
are the
as you
second
mentioned
most
before, that's
trafficked
not
item
the
in the
case.
world, and this is all happening right in your own backyard.
Hi, my name is Jesse Bach. I'm the Executive Director of the Imagine Foundation in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm going to be guiding you through this presentation, meant to just teach you a little bit about human trafficking. Human trafficking occurs when someone is forced to work through fraud or threat of violence for no money beyond subsistence. It's the modern terminology for slavery. Slavery exists because we spend money. It's a crime of economics and human rights violations. It's hard to believe that we might actually be the cause of slavery, but it is the simple fact that slavery isn't a crime of anger, it's a crime of money. Someone basically wants to earn more money, and they don't, or they aren't willing to pay someone to actually work for it. Currently today, up to 27 million people are enslaved. Now that's important to realize because that means that 1 out of every 350 global citizens is a slave. If you look at roughly the population divided by the rough estimate of enslaved people today, it's 1 out of every 350. Human trafficking includes a number of different ways that people are enslaved and exploited, including debt bondage, child soldiers, forced labor, involuntary domestic servitude, agricultural slavery, forced prostitution, child sex trafficking, and organ trafficking. Now, to put this in perspective, here's a graph outlining slavery in 1860. I mean, we all learned about the Civil War and slavery in high school. And roughly in 1860, according to the U.S. Census, there were 4 million slaves in the U.S. If you compare that to the graphic on the right, today, in 2012, most estimations point to upwards around 27 million slaves. That's a significantly greater number. The good news is, while there's far more slaves today than at any point in human history, they represent a much smaller overall percentage of the population. The bad news is, with increasing globalization and consumerism, slavery is going to get far, far worse unless action is taken. Now, most people think that slavery and human trafficking is just an over-there situation, right? It's important to realize that the Civil War didn't actually end slavery. Civil War only made it illegal. The Trafficking in Persons Office in the U.S. State Department estimates that 17,500 people are smuggled in yearly, destined for one of the forms of slavery. And the National Center for Missing and Exploited Youth estimate that between 100,000 and 300,000 American children are at risk for one of the various forms of exploitation. There's no reliable number for estimating how many U.S. citizens are currently being exploited. Now, the only question when it comes down to it isn't if slavery exists or not, it's what you're going to do to stop it. One of the biggest things is becoming an educated consumer. Visit the website, slaveryfootprint.org, and actually find out how many slaves work for you. Read the list of goods produced by child and forced labor. That's published by the U.S. State Department. And it's amazing to see the average everyday things that we buy that are known to be produced by child and forced labor. Purchase fair trade products and locally grown food. Fair trade means that producers get a fair wage for their product. It's less likely to use slave labor. Locally grown produce is also less likely to use slave labor. And coffee and chocolate, even though we all love them, please, please, please be careful of coffee and chocolate. There's numerous allegations of slavery and human trafficking, both of those commodities. Purchase fair trade, and you're going to help in the long run. Ethical gold and diamonds. Everybody's heard of blood diamonds before, but very few people actually consider gold, silver, and other precious metals to be unethical. And when it comes down to it, if we are purchasing these things, it it pays into the system which keeps people enslaved. If you're going to buy gold, silver, diamonds, buy vintage stuff. It's already been mined. It's an existing commodity. It's less likely to promote future slave labor. Or go from U.S. or Canadian suppliers or mines. U.S. and Canada has very strict labor laws, and they're going to be less likely to use slave labor. Volunteer fundraise with an anti-trafficking organization. When it comes down to it, in the U.S., there's less than 100 beds for rescued people. That's a travesty. I mean, in your local APL, you might have more cages for rescued dogs than you do for rescued people in the nation. The modern abolition movement is just about 10 years old, and it's really, really in its infancy. It needs your help. One of the biggest things is to tell others about human trafficking and slavery. Follow an abolition organization or human rights, retweet, share the status updates, post videos to your Facebook. Social media is the abolitionist's best friend. It's what's going to help get the word out because it's not covered in the normal media. For further information, feel free to contact us. ImagineFreedom.org is our main website. Facebook.com/ImagineBenefit is our Facebook. Twitter.com/ImagineBenefit. YouTube.com/TheImagineBenefit. And thanks for being part of the solution.